throat 'cause, you know, getting all theatrical now. So this morning what we're going to do is have a look at this thing, what is here, which we sort of looked at last time. There's still lots of paperwork to do for this, so be aware that we haven't got too long to do it either, which could be a bit of a hassle, but never mind. So there is a piece of vinyl currently unprinted, and on my screen over here, which you can't see currently, is one I made earlier of your decals. I'll show you that in a bit. And I'm just going to print that now to this printer, and it won't take very long. Hopefully it'll work. There you go. So if I lift the lid on it there, look, you can see that little stylus is actually in there, and it's pushing that tiny little blade just into the surface of the vinyl. Just enough to break the surface, not enough to go all the way through to the backing paper. And you can just about make out what it's cutting there. To adjust things a little bit. Now it's not only cutting your vinyl decals out based on the sketches that you sent me, but it's also going to put some extra cuts in there to make it easier to weed. And weeding is the process of once it's been cut like this, of getting rid of all the bits that you don't want. Yeah, it's very therapeutic, weeding, if you're in the mood for it. It depends how complicated it is. If it's like super complex or super small, it can be a bit dull and boring, but it's quite a therapeutic process. So it won't take too long. That's 2 of them done. So that's Vince's V, and whoever did the F, that might have been James. And then we've got the Ace of Clubs, just been drawn now.
Or is it doing them all together?
Yeah, I'm just doing it on one because I'm just doing it as a demo, really. So what we're going to have to do is like somehow get these to you at some point, or some more of these to you at some point. And I found myself a piece of glass that I'm going to actually apply these to, following reasonably correct procedures-ish. So whilst this is happening, what you ought to do, guys, please, is make a note of the process steps that are involved. Don't worry about this bit. Don't worry about me drawing it in CAD or transferring your designs, putting an outline of your designs in CAD. I didn't redraw them, really. I imported your image, pressed a button, and it drew an outline around your images. So one or two need a little bit of tweaking. It's just Texoff 2D design, which is sort of like the bog standard schools design package that runs most of this kind of equipment, you know. Bit old school, but it's simple but effective. Bit like myself.
Does it work on laser?
Yeah, it was designed for school laser cutters and things like this.
Because I think I saw that over at Cal, so
Yeah.
so we don't have a laser.
Aww.
Yeah,
This video is going to sound a bit weird because I can hear your audio, but I don't think your audio has been picked up on the video sound. So if you are watching this video, I'm not going bonkers. I'm actually, Mr. Gibson's talking to me. You can sort of hear it, I think, in the background. So there you go. Oh no, hang on. It's putting now. It's nearly finished. Oh, that didn't sound very healthy, did it? And what it's doing now is just some extra cuts on there to make weeding easier. And you'll see what I mean in a minute. Assuming it didn't skip then and it didn't work properly. And pen retires into the corner. And here we go. Did it pick it all up? Oh, it's had a bit of a minor disaster on one or two of them. That horrible clunky noise was the noise of things catching on the back of the camera. So I think it's gone out of sync a little bit on a couple of them, but don't worry because we've got enough to work with. So on here then, just shift all my keyboardy stuff out of the way. What have we got? We've got Vince's V that you can sort of see, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start weeding. So it's just like garden weeding, getting rid of all the stuff that you don't want, and all it means is I'm going to start pulling this stuff off, and I'm going to it's quite therapeutic if I can get it started. You might have to pull it and tug it a little bit to get things to split open. So there, actually left on this backing paper is the start of Vince's V, and there's some more splitting out. So we're going down and getting some more of Vince's V. We've got what I think was Daniel's something or other. Right, so there's Vince's V, look. Cool, eh? And then we can get that to just peel out of there. I had to, if Daniel's listening, I had to just alter that ever so slightly, Daniel, because they were just, it's like a Suzuki S, that, doesn't it? They were just single lines, not thick enough. And if I'd have done that, you wouldn't have got any sort of indication there was a gap. So I just had to put a gap in there for you. And on this one, I think these went a bit wrong when it all went clunky. I think the F's alright, but the card may not work properly. So we've got the F based on the old Monster F, I think. There you go. And yeah, look, the bottom of this playing card's actually been sliced off. So that's all waste. So that's weeding. So that's number one in your list of steps. You need to weed your stuff. And to do that, generally, you would use a pin and a pair of tweezers. Now, in true Blue Peter fashion, I have a little box of pins just to show you how that works. So on the little bits that are inside, it's sometimes a bit difficult to get a start. So you just have to dig your pin in, and then you get a little start on there. So we've got sort of the outline of the playing card there, but as I say, this one's not going to work properly because it's been sliced through because the printing didn't work quite right on this one. So there you go, it's bust. But you keep on pulling through, and that I want to leave that in the middle. What I'm doing this so I can just show you the spade in the middle. Oh, that's come off. So you could still use this, but there's actually bits missing. So that bottom corner, for instance, is missing completely. So we won't do. And when we do it next time, I'll make sure that my camera's not in the way. But that sort of kind of works. So that's number one, weeding. Make a note of it. That's removing all the bits of vinyl that you don't want. Next step is to actually cut out. So which one shall we apply to my bit of glass? The bit of glass actually has already got an F on it, so let's do, because in true proper Blue Peter style, I did one yesterday. So there's my Vince for V, and I'll put these all to one side so we can maybe do another demo later if we need to. Now we've got the issue of how do we go about getting my Vince for V off this piece of backing paper and lined up appropriately on my wherever I'm going to stick it. Now, what we use is something called low tack tape or transfer tape. So step 2 after weeding is cutting out, just to make things a bit more easy to apply and manageable. So that's number 1 is weeding, number 2 is cutting out. I'm just going to have to take my headset off for a minute, hang on. Right, so proper Blue Peter now. We've got, I might put a piece of paper under there so you can see it a little more clearly. So let me just get a piece of paper out of my printer. So I've already got some decals that I sort of cut out and weeded yesterday, including one that's the ace of whatever it is, ace of spades. So I just put a piece of paper under there. There's the F that I applied yesterday. Look on my piece of glass, looks cool, eh? Now, how did I do that? So we're going to start off with this. Now, it's always tempting, because when you're a kid, what you do with a sticker is you just peel it off and you whack it on, don't you? Now, that's all well and good until you get something like this, for instance, that has an outer and an unconnected inner part. So you'd have to peel the outside off and stick that on, and then the inside off and stick that on, and you're not guaranteed to get it all in the same place or lined up properly. It's especially important with things like text or complicated shapes to get all the spacing right. So you don't really want to have to remove it off that backing card at all until you really, really have to. So step 1, weeding. Step 2, cutting out the basic shape. Step 3 is lining up where you want this thing to actually go. So on position it exactly where you want it, and you can sort of line things up where you need to. And once you've got it all lined up, and you might need a tape measure or a ruler, so that's step 1, weeding. Step 2, cutting it out. Step 3, applying and lining it up, which might involve a bit of marking, it might involve a bit of measuring to get that exactly where you want it, because you don't want it wonky, do you? You want it exactly where you want it. So you need to be able to mark that on your screen, on your piece of glass or your piece of whatever you're doing. And you can use a dry white marker or something to be able to do that. So if I want my thing to be lined up with those 2 marks there, then I can line my decal up like that, and I know that that's exactly where I want it. Now's the time for low tack tape. So low tack tape is something that's going to help us transfer the image. So it's called low tack tape or transfer tape, and it comes usually in big wide strips, almost the same size as the bits of vinyl that you've been cutting out. But I haven't got any of that, so I'm going to use masking tape. Now masking tape is okay, but it's not quite as good. And it's not quite as good, oddly, because it sticks too much, and it's sometimes an issue to get it off again. Oh, we've missed a stage actually. Let's go back, because this is really important, with your bit of glass. So before you line things up, or after you've lined, doesn't really matter. I've got some window and glass cleaner. Give that a bit of a squirt, because you don't want bits of dirt or dust or muck underneath your decal. So clean it first and then do your lining up. Because if you get bits of dust and muck and filth under your decal, then it sort of you can see it under the sticker, and it makes it look bad. So that's a quick clean. And there's also an idea, also if you go online, there's all sorts of instructions that help you to get any bits of dust out of the way, and they can use things called a tack cloth. And the tack cloth is just a cloth that's ever so slightly tacky, and it picks up any hairs or dust or any of that kind of stuff. So let's have a quick recap then, because I've got myself and then a bit of a muddle. What did we do? Well, we weeded it out, we cut it out, and now we're preparing the surface. So we cleaned the surface with some glass cleaner, and we made sure that it was free from dust or any of that kind of stuff. Right. Next step is to line it up. Where do I want this thing positioned? So in this case I've got myself a dry white marker, so it's not going to permanently mark my thing, and I'm going to line it up. Where do I want it? Well, I've looked and I've measured, and I'm going to line it on that line there. That's exactly where I need it. Don't use a permanent marker on paintwork or anything, because that's just crazy. You'd have trouble getting it off. And you line up your decal as you've marked it out, and then you secure it with your first piece of masking tape. Now if this was low tack tape, then it'd be easier, but I'll show you what we're going to do. So I'm just going to secure that top edge exactly where we want it with a layer of masking tape, and the masking tape I'm just going to do just to the ends of the decal like that. Oh, beauty of masking tape, it tears really easily. And it doesn't stick very much, that's the thing. But the masking tape actually is a bit too sticky, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So now what I have to do, I've secured it in place, and I just have to cover the rest of the decal, the rest of the sticker, in layers of masking tape. So I'm not trying to stick it all down, I'm just trying to join up all the bits of the decal with masking tape. And I'll show you how that works in a second. So I've just about covered everything up with masking tape, and I've been careful not to actually stick it down so that it flaps. So I can do that, right? So I can get a flap, and that that's going to locate that exactly now, because that masking tape is going to hold all of my vinyl together. Right, so next bit, what have I done so far? Just to make sure you're getting this list down. Weeded it, cut it out, cleaned the surface, prepared the surface, got rid of any dust. Use my ruler and a dry white marker to sort of line it up and position it exactly where I want it. Align my sticker in the position that I've marked, and then secure it in place with a bit of masking tape, making sure that I can still have this flappy action going off. Then I cover the rest of the decal with masking tape, or transfer tape if it's proper stuff. Now what I can do is I can come in here and I can turn it over and I can start to remove the backing paper. There you go. So the backing paper's off. So that's the back side of the, I said backside. That's the back side of the vinyl, which is the sticky side. So now when I press this down, this is going to be in exactly the right place because it's held by my transfer tape, my masking tape, and I can give that a good shuggle about. Right, so that now should be nice and sticky to my piece of glass. Now, sometimes if you've got a really big vinyl decal, what you do is you'd wet the glass first, but these are only little so it doesn't matter, and wetting them just allows all the air bubbles in it to slide about a little bit so it flattens out nicely. Then you wait for it to dry and then you take off this transfer masking tape. So let's try and peel off this masking tape now. Now this masking tape should come away leaving my vinyl decal exactly where I want it, and you can use a credit card now to actually make sure there's no air bubbles in there, and just keep it pressed down so that when you take your masking tape, your transfer tape off, if it tends to pull up your vinyl, which it sometimes does because masking tape's a bit too sticky, then you can just make sure that you press it down as you're going. So it's quite therapeutic actually. It's not a horrible job. It's kind of fun. Just keep pushing any air bubbles in there. You push them out with your little. This is a. Don't know what this is. I know one of those all-in-one cards that your kids get for Christmas, and then they end up in your wallet forever until they're worth nothing. Now, and that's it. It's done. It's stuck. So that's properly applied. Now, to actually test it, so you need to make sure that it's good. Oh, I can see a little air bubble in the bottom there. I'm just going to push that air bubble out. In fact, that might not be an air bubble. That might be a little bit of trapped dust because I wasn't very. I think I've got it. So to test it, just check visually that you've got no air bubbles. And because this is a piece of glass for demonstrating, I can actually turn it over and check it. And you can see from the back side of it that it's all nicely it's not all nicely stuck. There's no obvious big air bubbles in it, and if I run my hands over it, then I can't. It's properly stuck. There's no edges or anything else. Even that little tiny pointy bit is nicely stuck down. So there you go. That's an effective way of applying a decal accurately. And while I've been rubbing away, of course, I've got rid of that dry white marker line as well. So that's how it's done. What you need to do is to add to your PowerPoint presentation a list of steps that I've just explained to you there, so you can. It's like an instruction list that you can use to as a procedure to follow when you're applying these things. So what did we do? We started by weeding out the unwanted bits of vinyl. Then what we did was cut out our background or backing paper, cut it out to a manageable size and a nice straight edge on the top. Next we went and prepared our glass surface. I got some window and glass cleaner, and make sure there's no dust or other bits that are going to be trapped under your sticker. Next thing, we marked out with a ruler and a marker pen where our sticker actually wanted to go, our decal. So if we wanted it to be a certain distance from a particular feature or nice and level or whatever else, line that up. Then next step is to position the decal where you want it. Then you start to secure it with your masking tape, and you make sure that your tape goes all the way across all of the vinyl bits, but you're not trying to stick it down all the way to the piece of glass. What you want to make sure is that you can still get some flap action, because that without the flap action then you can't take the backing paper off. All right, so apply the masking tape, then you can hinge the whole thing forward and remove the backing paper, and then you can carefully lay it back down again, rubbing as you're going in order to secure the vinyl sticky side onto the glass, and give it a good rub, and press down quite firmly. Next stage is to start peeling off the masking tape, and as you're peeling off the masking tape, just follow it on with an old credit card or something like this, a bit of plastic, and that will make sure that any tendency that the tape has to pull the vinyl off the glass, you can press it back in, keep it in place, and you can carry on taking off the masking tape. Right, once you've done it, because if it is on a piece of glass, you can check around the other side, see if there are any horrible air bubbles. You can have a look just in the light to make sure there's nothing trapped underneath, there's no air bubbles under it, and then you can just check the edges, and if all the edges are stuck, then you know you've got a good sticker installation there. And these things last for years and years, and if they're stuck down properly on a clean surface, there's no reason why they should not last the lifetime of your car. Eventually the sun and stuff gets them, and they actually bake on really hard, and they can be really difficult to remove. So if you are intent on removing this, do it fairly soon, fairly immediately, and they're quite straightforward to take off really. All you've got to do at this stage is get a little blade, which I don't, I might have, hang on, and we'll just take one off. I've got a tiny little blade here, my Swiss Army knife, and to take it off, which I imagine the majority of you will do, and it can be quite difficult actually, just get a little blade under there. Obviously be really careful with your fingers. Once you've got a start, then you should be able just to pull it all straight off again without any damage to the underlying piece of glass, and no one would ever know it's ever been there. Okay, so there you have it. I'm going to stop this video now. I'm going to post it on the team chat so that if you missed the start of the session, you can go back and have a look at it. Let's have a look. How do we do that?